Hey guys, so in this video we're going to compare prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells as well as plants and talk about the evolution of prokaryotic cells into eukaryotic cells. Okay, so in that process is called endosymbiosis, but we'll get to that here in a minute. Okay, so first let's compare this prokaryotic organisms with the eukaryotic organisms. So let's make our little chart here, and you should have this in your notebook. If you don't, just make a quick pause the video and make your chart so we can go through it together. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is a cell wall. They both have a cell wall. These are prokaryotics and eukaryotics. Okay, they both have a cell wall. It's just that in eukaryotics or eukaryotes have their cell wall made out of cellulose. Okay, so plant cells have their cell wall made out of cellulose. Fungi have a cell wall, but their cell wall is made up of something different. Okay, and we'll talk about that later on. But it's actually called chitin, and we'll talk about that when we get to fungus. Okay, prokaryotes, they have their cell wall and it's made out of peptidoglycan. Okay, it's different than cellulose. So if we know the makeup of the cell wall, we can actually use that to identify the organism, either a prokaryote or eukaryote. Okay. Another thing that they have in common is their DNA. They both have DNA, but in eukaryotes, the DNA is a double helix. Okay, it's double-stranded. We know that DNA is a nucleic acid, and it's made up of nucleotides. Okay, so it's made up of two strands of nucleotides, and we call it a double helix. In prokaryotes or bacteria, the DNA is made up, it's a circular DNA. Okay, and it's still double-stranded, but it's circular. Instead of being a double helix, it's just a circular shape. Okay, they both have flagella, which flagella helps with movement. Okay, it helps the cells move around. They also have a cell membrane. They both have a cell membrane that controls what goes in and out of the cell. Okay, even though they have a cell wall, they still have a cell membrane. Just because a cell has a cell wall, it doesn't mean it doesn't have a cell membrane. The cell membrane is still there. It's just the cell wall is there for extra protection and structure. They both have ribosomes, which you need to remember that ribosomes are there to synthesize proteins or to produce proteins. Okay, they're in both. They have cytoplasm, which is the gel that keeps everything together inside the cell. Okay, and prokaryotes have a capsule which surrounds the cell wall, and that's why it's so hard to kill bacteria sometimes, because they're so well protected. They have a capsule, they have a cell wall, they also have a cell membrane. All the bacteria are unicellular, meaning that they are single-celled, or they are made up of one cell. Okay, they live in colonies, but they are unicellular. Okay, and the examples of prokaryotes are bacteria and archaebacteria, which we already talked about. And this is a quick, very generic drawing of what a bacteria cell looks like. Okay, you see the flagella, that's the long tail coming off of the bacteria, that's the flagella, and then these little hairs right here are called the cilia. You can see the DNA here, and you can see the ribosomes there. Okay, so that's what a prokaryote looks like, or the generic drawing of it. Okay, now we know that eukaryotes have organelles. Okay, something that prokaryotes do not, but they also have a nucleus. That's a big difference. A nucleus that controls everything that goes on in the cell. A chloroplast, okay, which is another organelle, but that's only in plants, and that's responsible for photosynthesis, converting sunlight into glucose. Eukaryotes also have mitochondria, which is the powerhouse of the cell, which a lot of you guys know it as, but it's actually an organelle that converts glucose that we get from other animals or plants into ATP, which is the energy that we can use. Okay, we also have, or eukaryotic cells also have lysosomes, which are the trash can of the cells, if we want to think of them as that. Anything that needs to be destroyed or broken down goes into the lysosomes, and the cell gets rid of it. And then we also have the rough and smooth ER. Okay, and the reason the endoplasmic reticulum, okay, has a smooth and a rough part is because the smooth part makes the lipids that are needed in our body, and the rough part of the ER makes the proteins. And the reason it's called rough is because a lot of ribosomes are actually stuck into its membrane, and they're coming out, so it looks very rough with those ribosomes, which make proteins. Okay, and the examples of eukaryotics and prokaryotics the examples of eukaryotics are going to be plants, animals, fungi, and protists. Okay, so again, if you need a review again, just rewind the video, watch it again, but make sure you're looking at the functions of all these organelles that we're talking about here, okay? All right. So this is another cell. These are the two cells. This is a prokaryotic cell, a eukaryotic cell. You can see that the size in here in the picture they look the same, but the prokaryotic is really, really small. If you look at the measurements down there, they both have DNA. They have the eukaryotic is the one with the nucleus. They both have a ribosome. They have a cytoplasm and a cell membrane, and that's what we put in our organizer. Okay, but this is just another, again, a generic picture of this cells. Okay, now if we go if we go into the eukaryotic side, then we can compare both plants and animal cells. Please, please, please do not confuse plant cells and animal cells with prokaryotic versus eukaryotic. Plant cells and animal cells are both eukaryotic, but we still need to be able to differentiate between them. Yes, they both have a nucleus. They have a lot of things in common, but plant cells have three things that we need to know and we need to use to differentiate between these two cells. So let's get started. They both have a vacuum. We know that. It's just that animal cells have a very small vacuum, while plant cells have a large central vacuum where they store water and nutrients. Okay, they both have a cell membrane. They both have ribosomes. We know the cell membrane is to control what goes in and out of the cell. The ribosomes make proteins. We already talked about that. They have a cytoplasm, which is the gel that keeps everything together. They have the nucleus, which controls everything in the cell. Lysosomes, which we just mentioned, are the trash cans of the cell. And mitochondria, which makes ATP through a process called cellular respiration. Okay. They also have the rough and smooth ER, which the smooth part makes lipids, the rough makes proteins. Okay. All of these are organelles that are in both of these cells. Okay. Now, plant cells have a cell wall that's made up of cellulose, and they have chloroplast, which is the organelle that's responsible for the process of photosynthesis, which is changing sunlight into glucose. Okay, those are the three big differences between plant cells and animal cells. Okay, plant cells have the cell wall. I'm making a very generic or general picture of it. You can see the white line is the cell wall. The yellow line is going to be our cell membrane, and then we can put the central vacuum there and the nucleus. And I'll put some arrows here to identify that's our nucleus, that's our chloroplast and our large central vacuole. You can see the cell wall and you can see the cell membrane. Okay. Animal cells have flagella and cilia. Okay, something that helps them move around, especially sperm cells. They have that flagella, the little tail that allows them to swim. Okay, and they also have centrioles, which we'll talk about later on in the semester when we get to mitosis and meiosis. These structures are involved in cell division. And the drawing of a eukaryotic cell or an animal cell is here. You can see at the top is going to be the mitochondria, then the nucleus. Then that is what the smooth and rough ER looks. You see the little spikes, the yellow spikes on there. Those are ribosomes. Okay, and I'm just going to point to it with an arrow and give you a number. As you can see, number 1 is going to be the cell membrane. Number 2 is the nucleus. That's going to be our rough and smooth ER. Number 3 is the smooth. Number 4 is the rough. And then that's pretty much the comparison chart between plants and animal cells. So please, please, please do not confuse plant and animal cells with prokaryotics and eukaryotics. Okay? All right, so we're going to stop here. I'm going to make another short video about endosymbiosis. I don't want to make this one too long, but make sure you go back and review the differences. You need to be able to tell these two cells apart. Look at the slides that you have. Look at the comparison charts, know the functions, know the structures of these organelles, and make sure you can, if you're given two descriptions, make sure you can tell what you're looking at, either a prokaryote or eukaryote, and if it's a eukaryote, are you looking at a plant or are you looking at an animal? Okay, I hope this helped. Let me know if you have any questions.